I find a lot of things interesting in life, like choice, what you chose, why you chose it, and the greater effects of those actions. Today in this video, we'll be going over how I chose to create. One afternoon, I've been scrolling on YouTube looking for a video to watch, and I clicked on a video by a creator named Tennis Tom, doing a deep dive on the album Damn by Kendrick. In this video, Tennis Tom does a deep dive song by song, explaining its deeper meaning and themes, talking about the story that Kendrick is trying to tell. But the biggest takeaway is that depending on which order you listen to the album, the overall story changes. You decide. So I gave the album another listen. I close my eyes and I slowly start to see everything unfold. Most of the videos I make have some sort of music element in them, and usually that's due to the song being the main inspiration on why I made the video in the first place. Sometimes when I'm listening to these songs, they play out like a movie in my head. I'll see every character, every setting, every scene transition, all play out. Most people, when they get this type of vivid image in their mind, they jump straight to their drawing pad, their pencil, their computer, and get to working. Not me. Usually, when this happens, I'll play that vivid image or movie over and over and over, refining every detail mentally, nailing down the art style, the camera orientation, and background details until I know everything that I want. Sometimes it'll take about 2 to 3 days. I'll think about it while I'm doing other things, like working on other projects, other tasks, things of that nature. And when I feel like I've nailed down all the details that I want to include, that's when I start working. Some may say this process wastes time. I could just jump into creating and work out the kinks as I work. But I've come to realize that making this sort of mental storyboard is more efficient for me and how I work. That way I can focus most of my energy into producing exactly what I want with little to no errors, instead of thinking about what I want to make as I try and make it. Not to say that I don't run into issues, but for me, this helps me avoid certain problems altogether. I don't usually apply this process to my other creative mediums, but since this project is all my own, I feel like I can work in the way that's most natural for me. Once I've thought of everything that I want to include, I start with our main character. I wanted the visuals in this to be a more refined version of the style that I've developed. Starting with the face, I kept it similar to my formula when making faces, looking at the defining features and accentuating them just a bit, but mainly focusing on the nose, ears, and mouth. Here I wanted to expand upon something that I had done with my Atlanta short, working on Donald Glover. A lot of times, African hair can have these super curly flyaways that hang on by a thread, and from a distance they look like they're floating. I wanted to do something similar, but apply this process to Kendrick's braid. I made each braid its own set of individual floating pieces. Once I had that done, I moved on to his body. Since I've been modeling for a few years, I've met a lot of human torsos, human bodies, male and female models, so a lot of the time, I'll apply my reduce, reuse, and recycle method. With this method, I'll usually take one of my previous existing models, tweak it just a bit to match the characteristics that I want to apply, and then apply that to my new model. For the past 2 years, I would say, I've been using this Spider-Man model that I made. I haven't done anything with this model yet. Maybe something will come out in the future. As for now, he's kind of just my base model for the male anatomy. So for Kendrick, I make sure to keep the overall frame on the shorter side to match his real life proportions. And sooner or later, I'm pretty much done. This step takes about maybe like 1 or 2 hours. When making my models, I try to take my time and not rush anything, just so I don't feel stressed or overwhelmed at any point. Now I move on to making the textures. Now, specifically for this video, I ran into a lot of problems, mainly because my main computer, which I have now, died on me. When coming up with the idea for this video, my computer already had some issues that need to be fixed. Unfortunately, it died. I don't know why, the battery just stopped working, but thankfully I had another laptop to use, which is my MacBook Pro. Not very pro, but it was good enough to get the job done. Then one of the main problems that I ran into when trying to make my textures is that I use this app called Sketchbook. Sketchbook at the time when I had downloaded it was free on all devices. Now on computers and laptops, you have to pay for it. I'm not gonna pay for it for one project while my computer is getting fixed. I'm not doing that. So here, I just readjusted my process a bit. I downloaded the app on my iPhone. I took screenshots of my model and all the views that I wanted to apply textures on. I uploaded them to my phone, applied the textures on there, and then I re-uploaded them back to my computer where I could apply them to the model. It was a bit annoying at first because my screen was much smaller and I couldn't use a stylus. I had to rely on just use my finger. It wasn't that much of a problem. I eventually got used to it. One thing I did notice is that a lot of the brushes are organized in different orders compared to the computer version. This made me have to scroll through and try a lot of different brushes to find the one that I wanted. But this opened the door for me to try new brushes with new textures. For example, when it came to replicating Kendrick's tattoos, I couldn't find an exact reference image that had all of his tattoos laid out for me to copy onto my model. So what I did, I just used the star brush and added the stars in place of his tattoos. And I liked it so much that I applied little bits here and there onto his shirt and on his pants. At this point, I completed Kendrick's model, and now I moved on to our second character in this video. Making her was more or less the same process as making Kendrick, starting with the head, moving on to the body, and then adding the textures. So I started sculpting the head. I gave her these very large glasses, and then I gave her this small gray afro. And then what I had done, I applied my reduce, reuse, recycle method from Kendrick's model to her model. I took his arms, changed the textures a bit so they're brighter, made the skin wrinkly where it needed to be, erased some of the tattoos. I took Kendrick's shirt, elongated it so it looked like a gown, changed up the textures as well, and now we have a brand new character that is about 90% Kendrick, 10% old lady. Lastly, for my video, I create all the necessary props and backgrounds. So at this point, I have all my characters modeled, and I begin blocking out each of my scenes. Here I set up all the character poses, getting the cameras in place, and scene transitions. And then once that stage is done, I move on to the actual hard part. I didn't go to school for animation. I've taken 2 classes where they had animation lessons in them, with opportunities to expand upon them a little bit more. Otherwise, I learned most of what I know about animation by either watching animated movies, watching behind the scenes, or just YouTube tutorials. In one of these classes, I reanimated a scene from the movie John Carter. Maybe in the future, I'll talk more about my process when making that video. Just leave a comment if you want to see that. So, after a lot of posing and keyframing for every little movement over and over and over, I eventually ended up with something pretty close to what I envisioned. This process usually takes about 4 to 5 days. I don't give myself a certain deadline. I just want to work at a pretty efficient pace for me. I don't get stressed or feel overworked. For this video specifically, it took almost twice as long because this MacBook renders very slow. Usually I like to render out like 2 to 3 test clips that are like 2 seconds long. And on my HP, it would take maybe like 10 seconds to get my clip. On the MacBook, it would take like 20 minutes. So I would do a test clip, see what's wrong, wait another 10 minutes, change something, and do that process over and over and over. And that just added up to days of revisions. And eventually it took about 10 to 12 hours to render out the clip entirely. There was a point where I'd start to render my entire video, go to bed, wake up, it's less than halfway. I think something's wrong, I cancel it, start it. 5 hours later, it's still less than halfway. Eventually, I just left it and let it do its own thing, and the video was finally finished. I'm very happy with how this turned out. I would say it's about 70 to 80% of what I envisioned. The main difference is that I envisioned this video taking place more of like a sunset, but I thought it would look better, kind of brighter in the day. But overall, this is pretty much exactly what I had wanted. Now we get into the Easter egg section, so a bit more about what the video is actually about.
We start on a black screen as the lyrics to the song pop up one by one. As the lyrics continue to appear, the camera slowly pans away to reveal they're being displayed on the screen of an arcade machine. This album has a unique ability to tell 2 different stories depending on which order you listen in, giving the listeners the choice on how they want the story to end. Initially, this reminded me of choose your own adventure games like Life is Strange, Until Dawn, or older games like Dragon's Lair. I wanted to bring light to that by giving Kendrick the opportunity to choose if he lives or dies in this game of life. Next, we see Kendrick walking out of the building named the Mad City Arcade, referencing one of his most popular albums, Good Kid, Mad City. As we see him walk out, we hear him on the phone listening to someone. This would be the voicemail audio from his cousin Carl. The audio is grabbed from the end of the song, Fear. In the next scene, we see Kendrick watching the blind woman on the sidewalk. If you count, she trips on her 7th step. There are theories that the blind woman may be more than what she presents herself to be. Possibly an angel, a spirit, a fate. many different theories and interpretations, and I wanted to allude to that with her falling on the 7th step, with the number 7 having significance in many religions and spiritual spaces. We see the blind lady look at the ground for a bit until she slowly looks straight at the camera. This is a little fourth wall break I added, showing that she realizes that she has not lost anything, but you have. So I wanted to add that look to the viewer to add a bit more impact on that note. The camera slowly pans from left to right as Kendrick is watching the blind woman, and he scratches his head. This is referencing a shot from my John Carter animation that I had mentioned earlier. I also think that head scratching is just a funny way to fill space if someone is just standing around. In the following scenes, we see everything play out as the lyrics state, and on the last shot of Kendrick, we see the camera snap back to the first angle as his first shot, except this time, instead of the camera moving away from him, it's getting closer. Earlier, the camera moves away, signifying his choice about to slip away from him. Now the consequences of his choices are showing up in his face. The sky slowly fades from a bright blue to a dark red. Depending on how you listen to the album, the story either displays a fall from grace or a path to salvation. Here we see his fall from grace. In the last shot, we see a light flash behind Kendrick and his eyes, revealing he chose a path leading towards an unsuspecting death. As the credits roll, we see at the end the blind lady pops up as the audio says,
"I don't like it."
I put this there as a way of saying that she doesn't like this ending for Kendrick. Also, I just wanted another reason to put her on screen.
So that is how I created the Blood animated visualizer. I really enjoyed talking about my process. I think at times it can be a bit unorthodox or confusing, but I feel when you are creating for yourself, you should just do what comes naturally. I do plan on doing more of these type of videos for my upcoming projects and previous ones. If there's one you want to see soon, just leave it in the comments below. And if you liked this video, just make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.